My adopted sister was always adored more by her parents. They therefore attempted to force me to coincide my store opening with her graduation when I established my own company. I thus received my retribution at last. I am 24 years old and came from what appeared to be a typical suburban middle-class family, but I have always been hurt by my parents' actions. Their entire reputation in our neighborhood was based on the fact that they were these wonderful people who loved their adoptive daughter, much more than their biological son. Few people are fully aware of the impact this had on me. Everything in my life changed when my parents brought my adoptive sister Emma, 21F, home when I was 6 years old. I was giddy with anticipation the day my parents sat me down in our living room to discuss the possibility of adopting a sibling. As I waited for my parents to get home from work, I would often spend my afternoons by myself in our backyard, inventing up games. The children in the area were all either younger or significantly older than me, and I had no siblings with whom to play. It seemed like the ideal answer to have a sister with whom I could share my toys and hang out during those long days. It was just what I wanted when Emma first came. During those peaceful afternoons at home, we played together, had snacks, and I at last had someone to chat to. Initially minor, the changes in my family continued to accumulate over time. Emma became the center of my parents' attention, and they made all of their decisions with her best interests in mind. In the event that Emma wasn't feeling it, they would call off our weekend family activities, adapted their schedules to attend all of her school functions while missing mine, and modified dinner plans to suit her tastes. I began to feel marginalized in my own household, as if my parents were losing interest in me. There is more to this narrative than just sibling rivalry, even though I am aware that some may assume I am just jealous. My parents' approaches to daycare for Emma and me differed significantly. My mom resigned from her 8-year job at the accounting firm within a week after Emma's arrival in order to become a full-time mother. Compared to when I was born, this was entirely different. After her maternity leave expired, Mom returned to her office work, so I had to find other caregivers. I spent the most of my time at my grandparents' little apartment or with whatever teenage babysitter they could afford that month, because my parents were always worried about money back then and worked extra and weekend shifts. The babysitting situation was anything from perfect. Instead than observing me, these girls, who were often high school students looking to supplement their income, saw their jobs as an opportunity to spend time with their boyfriends. They would sit in the living room, texting or conversing on their phones, while I would spend hours by myself in my room. Sometimes, while they thought I was sleeping, their lovers would sneak in through the garage door or climb through our rear window. My parents would terminate the present sitter after I repeatedly told them about these instances, then hire a new one who behaved similarly. During years, this cycle persisted, and I felt that no one genuinely cared about my welfare during the majority of my early years. It appeared like things would improve when Emma arrived. I jumped right into my big brother role. I gave her access to all of my toys and even assisted her in learning the letters. Having my mother at home full-time seemed like an added plus, and I did whatever I could at the age of 6. I had hoped that we would finally be able to do all the things I had seen other children do with their mothers, such as going to the park or baking cookies. As the older brother, my mother expected me to be self-sufficient and mature, but instead she lavished Emma with her time and attention, treating her like a princess. When my parents changed the plans for my birthday, things really started to get tricky. Emma's true birth date was unknown to the orphanage, and she had been discovered abandoned at a shopping mall. After conducting a number of tests, physical examinations, dental examinations, and development evaluations, the experts determined that she was around 3 years old at the time of her discovery. My parents decided that Emma should share my birthday, rather than keeping the date she was given at the orphanage or picking any other day of the year. They presented this concept as though it were a unique honor for me. I began to notice small differences every year, but those early combined birthday celebrations were tolerable. Even though I continued to get gifts and eat some cake, Emma started to dominate the gatherings. She would receive twice as many gifts from family friends and relatives, who would hardly acknowledge my gifts as they gushed about how wonderful it was that we celebrated together. Emma's backstory appeared to captivate everyone, who treated her more like a queen than a mere child. As everyone gathered around Emma to listen to her recount the same adoption tale they had heard thousands of times before, I sat there silently opening my gifts while attempting to avoid feeling invisible at my own birthday celebration. I still find it upsetting that my parents forced Emma to share my birthday. She was already officially given a date by the orphanage the day she was discovered. We also celebrated my aunt's birthday in September, my grandparents' anniversary in March, and pretty much any other day that could have been Emma's special day. However, my parents picked my birthday on purpose, asserting that Emma would feel closer to the family as a result. Birthdays are the one day of the year when most children feel special and like the focus of attention. However, this small childhood delight was transformed by my parents into yet another reminder that Emma's needs always came first. They concluded this choice with sentimental platitudes about sharing and family ties, which prevented a 6-year-old from expressing any disappointment without feeling self-centered. During that first joint party, my uncle was the only one who seemed to detect anything was amiss and pulled me aside to ask if I was truly okay with everything. By the time I was 10, birthdays were something I dreaded rather than looked forward to. From picking princess themes that made me feel uncomfortable at my own party to selecting a dessert that I didn't particularly like, Emma had complete control over our shared celebrations. The guest list scenario was especially unfair, because I was only allowed to invite 5 of my friends, whereas Emma would bring in 20 or more from her many activities. Because of this rule, I had to pick my friends carefully every year, which occasionally strained my bonds with those who were unable to go. After I was unable to invite my best buddy to my 11th birthday, we stopped communicating for weeks. When I wanted to invite my friend as a 6th guest one year, the inequity of these gatherings became even more apparent. My parents denied the request right away, stating that our home could already host as many people as possible. Nevertheless, there was always space for Emma's pals and their moms, who seemed to have to constantly watch over their girls. My parents used their go-to justification that girls require more care to brush off my worries when I brought up the fact that my buddies arrived by themselves. Our entire living room was occupied by Emma's friends and their mothers, who treated me like a guest at what should have been my birthday as well. On multiple occasions, I plucked up the nerve to propose holding separate parties. Every time I tried, my parents would cut me off with their prepared answers about Emma's troubled history. As if it somehow justified taking over my birthday, they would tell me that she was unaware of her true one, or, utterly disregarding the fact that they were giving her a difficult gift by consistently denying my feelings, they would bring up her difficult beginning in life for the 100th time. I always felt bad about bringing up the topic in these chats, as if I were being selfish for wanting a day to myself. I eventually gave up arguing over my birthday. I discovered how to play my part and put on a smile for Emma's brother on what had turned become her special day. The pain persisted. It simply became a recurring emotion on each birthday. While Emma unwrapped twice as many presents as I did, I would sit silently in the background and try to look joyful while family members swooned over her and hardly acknowledged me. Finding my passion for making things with my hands was the one silver lining in all of this. One dull afternoon, it began modestly by transforming an empty cereal box into a pencil holder. Before long, I was turning various objects from the house into works of art. Bins of gathered materials, old newspapers, plastic bottles, broken jewelry, and anything else I could use again made our garage my go-to spot. I watched do-it-yourself videos for hours on end, learning new ways to make everything from elaborate jewelry to gorgeous wall hangings. My works gradually filled my room. Emma was not allowed to share or take control of this. It was completely mine. By my early 20s, what had begun as a therapeutic pastime in my teens had developed into a lucrative internet business. I worked a day job at a local coffee shop and spent many evenings improving product images, creating descriptions, and writing and running my online shop. Social media users began taking notice of my handcrafted goods, and soon I had loyal clients from all across the nation. With cabinets full of materials, a special shipping station, and what should have been my dining room, my tiny apartment was transformed into a workshop. My funds ultimately allowed me to create my own physical store after 3 years of meticulous financial planning, working overtime, and reinvesting nearly every penny of earnings. The area I discovered was ideal. It was a former boutique with exposed brick walls and huge windows in a bustling shopping area. 2 months ago, I signed the lease, and in my free time I designed exhibits, planned the store layout, and planned a grand opening event. This was meant to be my chance to shine, to prove to everyone that the boy who sat in the corner on his birthdays had accomplished something meaningful. I even engaged a local photographer to capture the entire occasion. My folks reacted in a predictable way when I told them about the store opening. After 5 minutes or so of their seeming excitement, my mother revealed that Emma was graduating from college at the same time. They suggested that we combine the opening party with Emma's graduation celebration before I had even finished outlining my preparations. My dad nodded as though this was the most sensible notion ever, and my mom remarked, "Think about it. We can invite everyone once instead of making them come to 2 separate events." The irony of attempting to combine my milestone with Emma's once more went unnoticed by them. I declined right away, stating that I wanted my accomplishment to be the main focus of this celebration. When I resisted, my parents seemed surprised, as if they didn't understand why I wouldn't want to share this moment with them. Using their tried and true guilt-tripping strategies of making things easy for everyone, they persisted in pressuring me, accusing me of being selfish and challenging. They repeated the same lines they had used when I was a child. "It's only one day. And why can't you be more understanding?" But this time was different. I had been working alone to establish this firm for years, staying up late to fulfill orders. navigating challenging clients and gaining a thorough understanding of business operations via trial and error. I firmly said that this event would exclusively be about the debut of my store. They were no longer successful in making me feel bad. My parents became irate and said they might not attend the opening at all when they saw that I wasn't going to back down. I told them that was their decision to make for the first time in my life. I was left feeling bewildered and frustrated by the entire event. I was their son right here, accomplishing anything noteworthy all by myself. And rather than expressing pride and encouragement, they were attempting to minimize my achievement by bringing up Emma once more. They didn't think I was worthy of my own celebration, even as an adult running my own company. I was no longer a 6-year-old who could be persuaded to share his wonderful day, but the same patterns from my early years were reoccurring. Regardless of who came to celebrate, I made the decision that my store opening would be my time alone. Update 1. Following my online venting of frustration. Among the hundreds of comments I got, one particularly stood out to me. My parents unwittingly gave me the ideal opportunity to do revenge, someone said. The more I considered it, the more I realized that a college graduation would inevitably be eclipsed by the opening of my business, especially since I could give everyone first dibs on my merchandise and exceptional discounts. Directly beneficial things always pique people's curiosity more. I agreed to my parents' proposal in a message rather than continuing to oppose the combined celebration. I informed them that I had changed my mind and believed they were correct to gather everyone for a single, large celebration. My parents, who likely believed they had won me over with their guilt trips once more, were ecstatic at my seeming change of heart. I continued to be cooperative throughout all of the planning sessions, nodding in agreement as they talked about food possibilities and decoration ideas. As I had anticipated, my parents took full charge of organizing the party. They made arrangements for the cuisine, reserved a pricey location, and got in touch with all of our family members and friends. With Emma's graduation theme at its core. Every choice, including the color scheme and the kind of music to be played, was created with Emma's preferences in mind. The last piece of evidence that I had made the proper choice was the invitation cards they gave out. Emma's graduation was celebrated in big, classy letters across the top of these gorgeous gold-bordered cards. Even in the small print at the bottom, there was no mention of my store announcement. This was exactly what I had planned, but my parents undoubtedly believed I would be unhappy. Everyone in attendance would be completely taken aback by my revelation, because they were all focused on Emma's accomplishment. During these weeks, I worked quietly to finish the details of my store debut and prepare my own contents. As you could expect from my parents, the party location was perfect. They had invited almost everyone. My announcement came at the ideal moment, just after all the speeches but before the cutting of the cake. The bartender gave me a fresh glass of champagne after noticing me. I got to my feet, and all eyes were on me, most likely anticipating another Emma tribute. While my parents were busy welcoming guests, I worked with the venue personnel to create my promotional materials earlier. I didn't need sentimental appeals or poetic wording because my announcement was really brief. I just said that next month, after years of developing my online business, I will establish my first physical location. In a matter of minutes, crowds gathered around me to inquire about the store's location, the goods I would be carrying, and the exclusive deals I would be providing to friends and relatives. My aunt, who had just completed speaking about Emma's academic success, was now using her phone to show everyone images of my items. Throughout the evening, there was a clear disparity between my parents' private and public responses. As family members congratulated me, they forced smiles and nodded in agreement, maintaining their customary flawless demeanor in front of the guests. However, I could sense the stress in their body language, my dad's jaw tightening whenever someone brought up my store, and my mom's hands trembling a little while she served cake. Emma disappeared from her own graduation celebration shortly after her champagne toast failed, and hardly anyone listened to her rehearsed speech on her incredible college experience. My mom's facade eventually broke when the last relative left and the caterers started to clear up. I was besieged by her. I was now being accused of spoiling her darling daughter's graduation party by the same woman who had taught me to share the spotlight for years. Calmly, I expressed my stance, emphasizing that they, not me, came up with the concept for this joint celebration, as well as the fact that I had just announced my business as scheduled. My father's response demonstrated the extent of their partiality. He jumped right to blaming me of jealousy, rather than admitting that they had been treated unfairly for years. I had seen this pattern when I was a young child. Any effort on my part to assert my own space was characterized as selfish or envious. After 20 years of holding back, I finally said it. I detailed every celebration, every birthday, and every moment that had been appropriated and turned into Emma's own time. For once, I was just reporting the facts about their behavior pattern without requesting sympathy or compassion. My parents resorted to their standard defensive tactic, making the same claims they had made when we were kids. They brought up Emma's terrible beginning, her desertion, and the fact that she didn't know her biological family, which meant she required further help. I had heard the same excuses at every family get-together, school function, and birthday where my needs had been neglected. However, I didn't feel bad about what they said this time. I had worked with my therapist for years to process these emotions, realizing that their actions were motivated by their desire to be viewed as saviors rather than Emma's needs. We were all unaware that Emma had come back to the location and was waiting in the doorway when we confronted her. Putting on the dramatic show that had always worked so well for her, she rushed into the room with mascara streaming down her face. She accused me of being jealous of her position in the family and saying that I had always detested her. The truth was that, despite being told it was never enough, I had spent my early years trying to be the ideal big brother, giving up my space and my festivities. Instead of being the recipient of our parents' unrelenting favoritism, she was now behaving as though she had been the target of my anger. The days after the celebration demonstrated how ingrained my parents' partiality was. They only addressed Emma's injured sentiments, ignoring the ways in which their actions had exacerbated the problem. They kept calling me and asking for more than just an apology, but recommending that, in order to help Emma cope with the stress, I should pay for a trip. It was astounding how ridiculous their request was. Since people were genuinely interested in my business success rather than Emma's graduation, they wanted me to pay her thousands of dollars. They demanded that I give them my hard-earned money so they could pay for Emma's vacation after she felt overshadowed at one party. I simply responded to their demands by leaving. I was done playing their game after years of attempting to be understanding and accommodating. My parents appeared surprised that I wouldn't just give in and say I was sorry like I had so many times in the past. Their trump card had usually been Emma's tears, but they weren't working this time. Nothing would ever change, as evidenced by their inability to recognize the irony of Emma's outburst over sharing attention at one occasion when I had been compelled to share or give up the spotlight at every celebration for 20 years. I had already attempted to discuss these matters with my family. I made several attempts to discuss my parents' partiality with them during my late teens and early 20s. I used a variety of strategies, including writing them long emails outlining my feelings, requesting family therapy, and attempting to have civil conversations over family dinners. Emma had a rough beginning in life, and the same response was given to every attempt. This expression became their go-to justification for anything I said that hurt or irritated them. My mom only reminded me of Emma's abandonment when I broke down in tears during a particularly trying conversation when I was 19, and talked about how lonely I felt at my own birthday parties. I eventually came to terms with the fact that my parents couldn't see their own actions clearly after years of this habit. At the age of 21, I left their home and rented a modest apartment across town with the first earnings from my internet business. Since then, our friendship has grown more surface level. We occasionally visit one another at family get-togethers, send each other birthday greetings, and discuss significant life updates. However, there is no longer any genuine connection, no in-depth discussions, and no sharing of emotions. They're still baffled by my self-distancing. I've stopped expecting them to change or see things my way, but they still blame me for not being more understanding of Emma's needs. Second update. My parents surprised me with an even more absurd demand, just when I thought they had had enough of the commotion surrounding the graduation party. They arrived at my place without warning just before the big opening of my store. They sat uneasily on my couch at first, acting casual as they inquired about the store's preparations. They later revealed to me their true motivation for coming, which was to ask me to appoint Emma as the store manager. They argued that she shouldn't have to go through the typical job search process like everyone else because she had a college degree. They seemed to believe that I had a duty to give Emma a ready-made job because I had worked so hard to develop this company over the years. As my parents enumerated Emma's qualities for running my store, the conversation soon got strange. My father claims that her primary qualifications were intelligence, a general business degree, and beauty, as if managing a retail establishment had anything to do with one's physical attributes. I had studied business operations, customer service, and inventory management for years, but Emma's attractiveness obviously outweighed all of that knowledge. My mom didn't hesitate to offer that Emma should also cut the ribbon at the store opening when I mockingly asked if there was anything else they wanted me to do for their beloved daughter. What was she thinking? Emma would be compensated for feeling overshadowed at her graduation celebration. They wanted me to appoint a person with no retail expertise to a management position in my company and allow her to serve as the spokesperson for the launch of my store, because they believed Emma deserved to be in the spotlight once more. However, this was no longer about birthday celebrations or toy swapping. This was my source of income, my career accomplishment, and something I had created on my own without their assistance. They reacted to my rejection in the same way they had always done, by manipulating my emotions. The guilt trips came first, followed by charges of selfishness and threats. With the same adamance that she had used to make me share my birthdays, my mother delivered their ultimatum. They wouldn't come to the store opening unless I gave Emma what she wanted. Emma's arrogant expression as they threatened me informed me that she expected me to comply, just as I always did. Rather, I astonished them all by agreeing to their demands and telling them not to come at all. Even without my immediate family present, the store opening surpassed all of my expectations. The